righty. So today we'll be working in my final ministry in Judea, and we'll be working on chapter 4, the ramifications of raising Lazarus from the dead. And there are quite a lot of ramifications. It basically leads to Jesus's death. So we will now go there. I don't know why that's there, but I'm going to leave that there. So the ramifications of raising Lazarus from the dead, which is in John 11:45-57.
Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done.
Look again at John 11:42. Why did Jesus verbalize aloud his thanks to God?
Benefit of the people who see him raising Lazarus from the dead would believe God sent him.
Right. And look again at John 11:4. What was another reason why Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead?
God be glorified.
Why do you think some people told the Pharisees? Does the first word of verse 46 influence your belief as to why?
Yeah, to stop him.
Yeah. Some people ran to the Pharisees to say, oh my gosh, this is happening. So where it says, but we do know that there were this gives us the indication that some people weren't as happy as others that he did this. Here and in the next few scriptures, we have people that, no matter the evidence, simply will not believe or accept that Jesus is the Messiah. You may know some people today like this. What would be or are some reasons that people refuse to accept Jesus as the Messiah despite all the evidence?
They would have to change their ways of their lives, like, maybe they're, evildoers or whatever, so they'll have to change their life.
Yeah, I am recently taking our life group was taking a course called Alpha, and the one that I saw had to do with what Jesus did for us. And it's really interesting to me because, I didn't become a Christian until I was 27. And I had to think back, why did it take me so long? And I think back to perhaps because was so intelligent in a way, or thought of myself so intelligent, and saw people who are accepting Christ as not that intelligent or something, whereas it's not true at all. It's just one of the lies that Satan gives us, is that, the more you believe in Jesus, the more you realize how intellectually important that is. But Satan gives us so many reasons why not to accept him. What changed your mind about Jesus?
I didn't have I didn't have an answer for that, because I always believed in Jesus since I was baptized at, I don't know, 5, 6 years old, 7. No, I think I was 9. So I really don't.
So your family were Christian?
Yeah, I grew up Christian and in church since I was in kindergarten, so I believed in Jesus. So I didn't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm going to open my door because it's getting pretty hot in here.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to matter now because it doesn't change the background.
Okay. So the same way with the next question, I didn't know how to answer that one either, since,
If you don't know how to be an effective witness, many say the best argument is your own personal testimony. And many people came to Christ later and were brought to Christ. And some had the privilege of being in a Christian home and come to Christ that way. But did you have a situation where your strength was tested and it became stronger?
Probably, like with my first marriage, I believe in your vows, but because my first husband was a drug addict, I was physically and mentally abused. That's Chris's dad, and so then I left him three times. The third time struck out. 3 strikes, you're out. And so the third time I left him for good. And so God must have helped me through that time. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't go to church through that time. And then that's when I had met Doug on a blind date. And, but, I still believed in God, but didn't go to church until I moved here 40 years ago. So I guess there was a stretch there that I didn't go to church because of where I moved around. I
Mhm.
lived in Paramount, and then I lived in Culver City, and then we bought this house in Norwalk. I don't know
Yeah.
if I should say all those things.
Well,
You
I
can,
think you're fine
you-
so far. We might want to stop there, but yeah.
yeah. Okay. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the, how do you say that?
Sanhedrin.
Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing? They asked. Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation.
Right. They were worried about the Romans coming in, and the definition of signs are supernatural events that confirm the prophetic word and reveal God's power, presence, deliverance, and judgment on nations. Um, this man is performing many signs. If we let him go on, then Rome will come and take away our nation. That's kind of weird. Due to what the chief priests and the Pharisees heard about Jesus regarding Lazarus, what did they call?
A meeting of the Sanhedrin.
Right. Sanhedrin.
Sanhedrin.
What were the,
Sanhedrin.
yeah. What were the problems addressed in the meeting of the Sanhedrin? Go ahead and fill those in.
What are we accomplishing? If we let Jesus continue to perform signs, then everyone will believe him. Then the Romans will come and take away our temple and our nation.
Which they did eventually anyway, so it mattered little. Notice what word they use that Jesus is performing. What does this word mean?
Supernatural events that confirm the prophetic word and reveals God's power presence.
Yeah, notice verse 48 still happens. More people than they ever thought would believe in Jesus, and the Romans will still destroy the temple in 70 AD.
Then one of them named
Caiaphas. Caiaphas.
Caiaphas. Okay. Who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish.
Right. So who is Caiaphas? Josephus records that Joseph ben Caiaphas, only known as Caiaphas in the Bible, was made high priest by the Roman procurator Valerius Gratus after Simon ben Caiaphas had been deposed. He was high priest for 18 years. As seen here, he was the Jewish high priest who organized the plot to kill Jesus. He famously presided over the Sanhedrin trial of Jesus. So he is prophesizing, but he interprets the prophecy incorrectly. Who is Caiaphas?
High priest,
Yeah. How long will he be high priest?
18 years.
What did Caiaphas tell the chief priests and Pharisees in the meeting?
One man dies for the people, then the whole nation perish.
How is verse 50 prophetic?
Jesus dies to save the nation.
Right. If they wanted to silence Jesus, there would have been many ways to silence him. They could put him into prison or cut his tongue out, for just two examples. Why do you think they're going to have Jesus killed?
Because he could heal himself.
Right. Why do you think they're so upset with Jesus?
People believe him.
Yeah. Hmm.
He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life.
Right. Go ahead and complete number one.
He did not say this is on his own.
Why do you think this? What do you think this means?
That God did.
Right. He prophesied and he had a prophecy. He just misunderstood the prophecy. And he felt that he had to kill Jesus in order for the Jewish nation to survive. And it's not exactly what the prophecy meant. But God's prophecy still makes it even when he misinterprets it. Caiaphas's prophecy about Jesus has three components. They are, go ahead and fill those out.
Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. Jesus would die for the scattered children of God. Jesus' death will bring the Jews and the scattered children of God together and make them one.
Did the prophecy stated above come true?
Yes.
From the date of this meeting of the Sanhedrin, what did the members plot to do?
Take his life.
Caiaphas prophesied the truth, yet he interpreted it that they, the Sanhedrin, had to kill Jesus in order to save the Jews and the others from straying from their own religion. We know that Jesus had to die to save people to believe he is the Messiah from their sins. Isn't it interesting how God plans events to fulfill prophecy? He knew just who to tell this to have them misinterpret it, to cause the events that he needed to have happen.
Wow. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judah. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness to a village called Ephraim.
Ephraim, yeah.
Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples.
Jesus traveled from Bethabara, Bethany beyond the Jordan, to Bethany to Ephraim. Show this on the map. Why did Jesus travel to Ephraim?
Withdrew to a region near the wilderness to hide.
Right. The village of Ephraim, or Ephraim near the wilderness, was located in the wild, uncultivated hill country, 13 miles to the northeast of Jerusalem. It stands on a high hill with a wide outlook, including the plains of Jericho and the Dead Sea. Maybe where Abraham stood to see the Dead Sea when he was there, by the way. Based on the information here, how would you describe the village of Ephraim?
On a high hill with a wide outlook.
Yeah. Who stayed there with Jesus?
His disciples.
Right.
When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another, "What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?" But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it that they might arrest him.
What festival was coming up?
Passover.
This will be Jesus's last Passover. Why did the people from the countryside come early to Jerusalem?
Ceremonial cleansing.
Right. There are two types of ceremonial cleansing or purifications that they will be doing. The first is a necessary purification for those who have contracted any ceremonial pollution, like being near a dead body or ill body. The second would be a voluntary purification of fasting and prayer, preparing their hearts for the Passover. Who did they look for in Jerusalem?
Jesus.
What had the chief priests and the Pharisees given orders about?
Anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so that they might arrest him.
Knowing what's going to happen, Jesus still comes to the Jerusalem for the Passover. So now we come to the crossword. Okay, 2, the next festival that was coming up was the Jewish
Passover.
5, many of the Jews who saw the raising of Lazarus
believed
in Jesus. 6, some of the Jews who saw the raising of Lazarus told the
Pharisees.
8, the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the
Sanhedrin.
Right. 9, Jesus withdrew to a region in the wilderness near
Ephraim.
And 10, Caiaphas was high priest for 18
years.
One down. From that day on, they
plotted
to take his life. 2, Caiaphas
prophesied
that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. 3, the chief priests and the Pharisees were worried that the
Romans.
Would take away their temple and nation. 4, many Jews from the country came to Jerusalem early for their ceremonial.
Cleansing.
And 7, who's the high priest at this time?
Zephyrus.
Caiaphas, yes. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop the recording.